So President Trump's Mideast trip is in many ways a game changer, from his anti-interventionist speech the other day in Saudi Arabia to shaking hands with an ISIS leader who's now running Syria. Hey, forget about all those murders, the killing of Christians and all of that. You're a handsome man and that's all in the past now, I guess. To this, which Clandestine posted this earlier and I thought it was fascinating. He says, hear me out. What if Trump just negotiated a new deal with Iran without Netanyahu? Trump visited the red arrows near Iran's border in Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and UAE. Now we get news that Iran are willing to give up their nuclear weapons. I find it hard to believe this is all merely coincidence. To me, it looks like Trump's trip to the Middle East might not actually be about signing economic deals with Saudi Arabia and Qatar. I think more is going on behind the scenes that we don't know about. The real meetings are going on behind closed doors. Trump is up to something. And I tend to agree. Something big seems to be brewing here.
Redacted is brought to you by Hillsdale College. They are an online university that offers more than 40 free online courses in addition to other courses. And again, 40 of them are free. So you can learn about things that you've always wanted to have more knowledge about, such as the works of C.S. Lewis, stories in the book of Genesis, the meaning of the U.S. Constitution, constantly something we argue about in the United States, the rise and fall of the Roman Republic. All of these are free. You can take them at your own pace. They are self-guided. A good one that I was looking at recently, Introduction to Aristotle's Ethics, How to Lead a Good Life. Have you ever wondered how even we define a good life? How could you live it? Well, in this course, Hillsdale College President Larry P. Arnn leads you through the most important of Aristotle's ethics. This, again, is self-paced. You take it whenever, wherever. Start your free course right now. Again, I'm recommending you look into it. Introduction to Aristotle's Ethics, How to Lead a Good Life with Dr. Larry Arnn. So right now, go to hillsdale.edu/redacted to enroll. There's no cost. It's easy to get started. One more time, that's hillsdale.edu/redacted to enroll for free. One more time, hillsdale.edu/redacted.
Dan McAdams is here. He's the executive director of the Ron Paul Institute. Dan, good to see you as always. Just at a high level, what do you make of this trip? Do you think it's been a success so far? And do you think something big is brewing behind the scenes that us little people are not privy to?
Well, I have to admit, in the run up to the trip, I would say 4 or 5 days before the trip, we started hearing all these things about how, Trump and Netanyahu are on the outs. He's PO'd at Netanyahu. Waltz was fooling around behind his back with Netanyahu. And I kind of thought it was sort of PR spin to ease Trump's way into these Gulf Arab states. I thought it was just kind of, PR flag stuff. But honestly, at the end of the trip, it looks like it was actually true, because you saw a very successful visit. As you referenced earlier, you saw an amazing anti-neocon speech. I wish someone would tell him that he has a bunch of neocons working for him, but the speech nevertheless was fantastic. And I hope this could be, if he absolutely follows what he talked about there, this could be one of the most important and consequential speeches in foreign policy and presidential history, I think.
Now, I want to ask you about the libertarian take on meeting with former ISIS terrorists, because every time the media screams their head off about oh my God, he's meeting with Putin. Putin's a war criminal. He's KGB. He's bad. I'm like, I don't have a problem with it. I really want diplomacy with Russia. But then I see this meeting with former ISIS leader Ahmad al-Sharaa, who was Julani, who's now running Syria. And I think we have to have diplomacy in Syria. I can't have a double standard here. So how do we take this? Because if it does lift sanctions for Syrians and they can get medicine easier, they can have prosperity easier, doesn't necessarily make Christians safer. But is that my problem? Right? And so can you help me with that internal contradiction?
I think the phrase screams their head off is probably the wrong term to use when you're talking about ISIS, because they're good at taking people's heads off. But I actually thought that was a real downside of Trump's trip. I think it was, I don't know who told him to do it. I think it was disgraceful to meet with him. He's still on our most wanted terrorist list. And I can tell you that veterans of the Iraq War are seething, because not only is he a terrorist and a murderer, he murdered and tortured American citizens, American service members in Iraq. He was a courier for ISIS, and then he started up his own franchise of Al Qaeda in Syria, where he's responsible for implementing Sharia law in the Idlib province, which was absolutely devastating to women. And to this day, Alawites, Christians, Druze are being slaughtered. There was a huge slaughter a couple of weeks ago. He's the president. He's the one who declared it. And we're also seeing lots of women. I'm talking about teenage girls, Alawite girls, who are being kidnapped and forced into becoming the wives of some of these deranged killers who are on Giuliani's team. So, yes, you have to recognize the reality, I suppose, in Syria. But this, I think, is more of a nod to Israel than it is about Syria, because one of the conditions is that Giuliani will have to bring Syria into the Abraham Accords and all of this other business. So I think there's an ulterior motive there. But nevertheless, not really a bright spot for American foreign policy, in my opinion.
One of the other, though, so that's not, I agree with you, and that's why I said at the beginning, I think that was the blight on this trip, if there was a blight at all. But now we're learning about this Iran connection here, and this might be another bright spot, not a blight spot, but a bright spot here, that without Netanyahu's involvement, may actually be negotiating a nuclear deal where Iran would give up enriching uranium at the highest levels for nuclear weapons in return for removing of sanctions, and we would have some sort of a normalization process here. That would be a game changer in my mind, and it would be shocking that Netanyahu and Israel is not involved in this process at all. What do you make of that piece of this trip?
No, that's absolutely important. And in fact, just before we came on, it came out that Rubio had a call with Netanyahu today. And the readout is, for the first time, this administration has expressed its concerns over the treatment of Palestinians in Gaza. So that is and I'm sure it killed Rubio to say it, but this is a huge development. And I think it's a further distancing of this administration. Look, I think this deal is very close. I think one of the benefits of him talking to Gulf leaders, especially now for the rapprochement between Saudi Arabia and Iran, is that he's able to hear the other side of things. Now, no one is going to accuse the Saudis of being, overly ambitious in protecting the Palestinians. Nevertheless, he's hearing that side of it. And I think that's why we saw movement at the tail end of this trip, where we saw an indication from the Iranian side. One of the top advisors kind of teased out this idea that we would end high enrichment, we would forswear nuclear weapons forever in exchange for this. And Trump actually reposted it on his social media, which would certainly indicate that that's something that he's interested in. Now, the downside to all this, guys, is the fact that they are seething. The Republicans are seething in the House and in the Senate. 200 Republicans in the House and the Senate, and that would be every U.S. Republican senator except, thank goodness for Rand Paul, signed a letter saying you better not allow them to enrich any uranium, zero, none, or we won't pass it to the Senate, and you're going to get a junky deal like Obama had where the next president can overrule it. I think it's an absolutely despicable thing for Republicans in the legislative branch to do to their president, and it could really be a monkey wrench in the works.
Right. That's a great point.
Okay, so we need to put some pressure on our elected representatives if we can. Let's talk a little bit about the economics, because billions of dollars in deals, in trade deals done with these wealthy nations. And, I think that I've started to see the liberal media putting this out as if, I saw a headline on Drudge, it said Saudi first instead of America first. Like, look what he's doing. He's legitimizing these countries. He is putting their interest first. But this really could be a form of the intentions of the New Deal, where we are shifting away American employment from government jobs to real jobs based on international trade. So can you give me a pie in the sky idea of what this could be? And then what are the caveats to look out for?
I mean, well, Matt Judge should explain that to a Boeing worker who's going to be assembling some of these planes that Qatar bought, a lot of planes, and to the other workers who are going to be building some of these things. I think there's nothing wrong with the president being an emissary. I mean, he shouldn't be an agent of private government, but of being an emissary and bringing people along and signing deals. I don't see any problem with that. It's certainly better than what he criticized, which was going around the world lecturing people on how they should live. But the other side of this whole thing, and there was a fascinating article in Politico today where the Israelis are very upset because they're recognizing the massive contrast between the relationship between the U.S. and Israel, which is a net drain on our economy, on our political resources. And now what this trip has shown, which is that developing a relationship with the Arab Gulf countries can actually be a massive boom for the American economy. And I think that will further accelerate this sort of drift, I hope it will, in my opinion, accelerate this drift away from our dependent relationship with Israel, which is a negative relationship, and toward more positive relationships with countries who want to do business with us.
Yeah, when I hear people like Mark Levin say that, America's closest ally, Israel, no. That's not true at all. And we've benefited in no way by this relationship at all. In fact, it's hurt the United States of America tremendously. Daniel McAdams, always great to see you. Thank you for jumping in here before the weekend. Hope you have a great weekend. Dan is from the Ron Paul Institute, executive director over there. Always great insights. Thank you so much, Dan.
Thanks so much.